Well, hello there. Welcome to our Tuesday devotionals. My name's Dan. If we haven't met, I'm one of the pastors on staff here at Five Lakes. In case you don't know, these are just devotions that we do on Tuesdays to encourage people to engage with our devotional plan, which can be found at fivelakes.church/devotions. So today's devotion is for July 16th or from July 16th reading, and I have chosen Hebrews 13:14. That's the verse that kind of jumped out at me when I was reading through this. And so that's what we're going to focus on today. So I've shared before that I have moved or relocated quite a few times in my life. And I'm not talking about like to the other side of town. When I was a kid, we moved from South Haven, Michigan to Tennessee, and from Tennessee to Iowa, from Iowa to Dallas, Texas. And then in ministry, I've served in churches in Tennessee, Georgia, Michigan, Indiana, and finally here in Ohio. Now, a couple of things you need to know about me. One is I despise moving. It's the worst. It's just terrible. And I can't stand any part of it, including the part where you're like starting over in all your relationships. You're just imagine trying to find the post office pre-GPS in a new town, trying to find everything. All of that is difficult, having to rebuild relationships, putting distance between yourself and other people that you have come to care about. It's just hard. It's hard to say goodbye again and again. Then let's not even talk about boxes and packing and all that kind of stuff. So when I became an adult, I was convinced I will never move again. I knew pastors who had served in the same church for years and years and never relocated. You know, they were there 45 years or whatever until they retired. And that looked really good to me. But I did this thing where I surrendered to God and said, not my will, but your will, and I'll go and do whatever it is you want me to do. And my hope is to never move again, but you're in charge. In fact, in my family, we have a phrase that we use all the time, and that phrase is that God gets veto power. That means that I make the plans that I can make, I use my brain, I try to gather information, I do all those things, but in the end, God gets veto power as to whether I stay somewhere or go somewhere. And so that's kind of the principle that we're talking about a little bit today. And that brings us to Hebrews chapter 13, verse 14. And so let me just give you a quick bit of context here. So the book of Hebrews, full of instructions for the beginning of the church. So this has a lot to do with church itself, but also with how to live their lives. This was all new, which is hard for us to understand, but this whole following Christ thing was new. And so chapter 13 alone talks about things like loving others, showing hospitality to strangers, faithfulness in marriage, not falling in love with money, but being generous. And these were all pretty revolutionary ways to live, very countercultural. In fact, I would argue that they probably still are today. And you know that those people had to be thinking the same thing that I was thinking when I became a Christian, which was really two main things. One was, this sounds really hard. And then the second one was, why would I do this? And that brings us to Hebrews 13:14, which says this, for this world is not our permanent home. We are looking forward to a home yet to come. And when I was praying about this and I was thinking about that verse and meditating on it, I kind of walked away with two main observations. The first one is this: ultimately, we don't belong here. Like, this is not our permanent home. Ultimately, I'm not a Michigan Wolverine or a Tennessee Volunteer or a Georgia Bulldog or, get ready, not really, ultimately, I'm not really an American. Yeah. And I have lived in those places and I do live in those spaces, but those don't define who I am, not at the core, because those are temporary places that I'm visiting. really. The first part of the verse is a good reminder to all of us that our time here in light of eternity is just a dash between the year we were born and the year that we die. And then the other observation that I pulled away from this is just the idea that I need to travel light. I need to live like I'm not here permanently. In the verse, it says, I need to look forward to a home yet to come. That phrase, look forward to, is actually one Greek word, and it actually means this, to seek diligently. So like look forward to, in my mind, is kind of a, well, that's out there somewhere and I don't need to worry about it. I'll just look forward to it. But the Greek word actually makes it look like, no, this is an active thing that we do. Like to look forward to seek diligently. And that is, how do I live in a way where I'm actually leaning my living toward eternity rather than this being my permanent home? So what does that mean for us, and what do we do with that information? I just kind of sat down and thought, well, how do I actually apply this to my life? And I kind of wrote out this question for myself, and I hope that you can apply it to your life as well. And the question is this: in what way am I living today that reflects what I really believe about my permanent home? In other words, am I investing in things that, as Jesus said, don't rust or won't expire or pass away? Or am I investing most of my time, my energy, my choices, my finances, my relationships? Am I investing in a way that reflects that I'm seeking diligently or leaning forward toward eternity? And for me, it was just a good reminder and a moment of self-examination, a little bit of a challenge too. But it's also chock full of hope. And let this be your hope for today, that yeah, we live in a broken world and there's a lot that is not resolved. But this is not our home. And there is a home, there is an ending, there is a destination that is whole, that is healed, and here's my favorite part, that is permanent. So I hope that blesses you today. Thank you so much for joining us.